Locked on crossover time. The Pacers shoot the snot out of the ball and take and steal game one here in Rocket Arena. The Cavs decidedly did not shoot that well. Tony East and Denny Cunningham from the arena after Pacers Cavs game one.
You are Locked On NBA Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's up, everybody? Happy Monday. Welcome to a Locked On Pacers, Locked On Cavs crossover after game one of the Eastern Conference Semifinal series. I'm Tony East, the host of Locked On Pacers. Danny Cunningham from Locked On Cavs here as well. We're still in Rocket Arena where the Pacers 121, Cavs 112. The final score from the first game of the series. Darius Garland didn't play. The Pacers had to take advantage, and they did. An excellent offensive night for them with execution, and as they made very clear after the game with shot making. Danny, what'd you think?
Yeah, Kenny Atkinson after the game said otherworldly shot making by the Indiana Pacers. He said in the first half, and did not have the numbers for the full game, but he said that they held the Pacers to like the second percentile shot quality in the first half, and Indiana was making absolutely everything. I think there are things that the Cavs need to fix on both ends of the floor, but ultimately Indiana shot over 50% on threes, some of them wide open, some of them tightly contested. And the Cavs, who finished as the number 2 3-point shooting team in the regular season, shot 44% from beyond the arc in the first round against Miami, finished with their second worst shooting game from deep this entire year, 9 of 38 from beyond the arc. Like, this is, if you think that is sustainable, you feel really, really good about the Pacers. If you don't, I think you probably come out of this game saying the Cavs kept this close despite playing really poorly offensively.
Yeah, Rick Carlisle called it an exceptional shot-making night for the Pacers. The coaches did a good job with
so what's more credit, exceptional or otherworldly? Who gave the Pacers more credit?
Yeah, I appreciate the coaches going that route. And usually after games like this, something I like to talk about, and I'm sure you do too, is if the Pacers made 50% of those threes, but their shots were awesome, they'll still feel good about how they played. Largely, they just, as they did to the Bucks, and you would text me about after every game, they mostly generated really good threes in this game. Ben Mathurin hit a late shot clock one that was tough. Miles Turner at the end of the third quarter hit a tough one. Andrew Nembhard late in the game hit 2 really tough. Each of those, obviously some swing threes as there are in every game, but in general, I think they like their shot quality, which they'll take to game 2 happy about. And the other reason they'll feel thrilled about that is they just smoked the Bucks because they got whatever shot they wanted for an entire series. Of course, the Cavs are a better defensive team than that. So that's the other side of that coin. But the Cavs, as we just heard from Donovan Mitchell and Evan Mobley, like their shots too. They just made 23% of them, which I believe after checking was their second worst 3-point percentage game of the season.
Right. I would bet that in game 2, that number is going to go up a little bit and the Pacers 3-point number is going to come down a little bit. I don't think that this is necessarily, and I think that both these teams can generate shots probably about the same quality they did in this game. But I think that those shooting percentages are going to level up. Like, that's kind of the thing that I take away from this. And I didn't get a sense from anybody that I talked to, players, coaches, anybody connected to Cleveland. There's no sense of panic coming out of this game. Like, they feel as if they lost this game, not because of the pace at which Indiana played. Like, they acknowledged that took some adjusting to, and I thought they did a much better job after the first quarter of kind of controlling the pace. Indiana dictated it very strongly early on. After that, I thought the Cavs did a better job, but I do think that the Cavs feel confident they're going to shoot the basketball better than they did on Sunday night.
I think the Pacers were thrilled with the pace of the game, especially when they set it early, and it's hard to change the rhythm of the game. I thought the Cavs did at least a decent job of that, but Mitchell did a good job, I think, highlighting the struggles the Cavs had getting out of that rhythm after the game, which is when you're missing a lot, the Pacers are in transition. When the Pacers are scoring or making shots, they can set their defense, and that kind of just creates this snowball effect of a game that goes the direction of the team pace-wise that is making the shots, right? And then that was the Pacers today, who were flowing into stuff quickly. But, they never got late in the shot clock. The Pacers did. They were able to kind of get the shots generally, I thought, that they wanted, unless they went against Evan Mobley. Is there 2 of Evan Mobley? He is everywhere. It's unbelievable. But, outside of that, I think you're right that as the game went on, the pace tilted a little towards the Cavs, but I think the Pacers walked away a little bit going, oh, sweet. Like, we know that if we play our way similar to the first round, shots we like will be there and the pace will be there, but it is harder to speed the game up and play at the speed you want when you're pulling the ball out of the net more often. So it will be important for them to defend as well as they can. In game 2, their defense was good enough in this game. Their paint defense will certainly be something that they even talked about after the game that needs to be adjusted to almost 70, maybe exactly 70 points in the paint for the Cavs. But the pace battle did early tip to Indiana, and I think that set the tone for the rest of the night.
It definitely set the tone. The interior is where I think the Cavs went into this series expecting to have the advantage. They obviously scored in the paint. I don't want to say at will, but there were stretches in this game where it kind of felt like they had a layup line going. And if they could have parlayed that with some made shots from the outside, and when you look at like Donovan Mitchell's box score, to me, is something that's going to stand out about this for the Cavs. 33 points, great, but he needed 30 shots to do it. Yeah. 1 of 11 on three-pointers. He had a 3 in the first quarter because he and Evan Mobley both scored 5 of the first 10 points for the Cavs, a three-pointer for both of them in that stretch. And then after that, the Cavs only made 7 more threes. Like, that is just not an area where they can live. Donovan needs to be more efficient. I thought the ball was a little too sticky for the Cavs, too. And their assist number, I kind of think is, I don't want to say a little bit misleading. Like, I don't think that the ball moved as well as we see it when the Cavs offense is really going. Thought it was a little sticky. And I think that that is the area where they really missed Darius Garland in this game. There was a lot of conversation, Tony, in Cleveland, and somewhat nationally too, because of Kyle Anderson, saying that the Cavs are better off without Darius Garland.
Silly.
And 1 game sample size is never anything, like, it's never big enough to prove any point, just the same as a 2 game sample size against the Miami Heat can't prove that point the other way. But I thought the Cavs really, really missed Garland's not only shooting tonight, but creation and just kind of the way that the ball can pop when he's on the floor too.
Yeah, I was not surprised they went with Merrill. You and I talked before the series. Kenny loves it. If he's making an adjustment lineup-wise, he's picking the shooter first and then figuring it out from there. I thought maybe in second half he'd go to Jerome just to get some ball handling pop on the floor, but not a great Ty Jerome game. I don't think even he would say it was a great game for him. He got in the paint some, but like was clearly frustrated. There were no whistles today. Right. Oh my goodness. They were letting guys hit at the rim, going both directions. And so for Jerome, who thought he was getting fouled a few times throughout the game, you could tell he got a little flustered and didn't play the way that he needed to, but Merrill didn't hit enough shots. And I thought it was interesting that you and I thought, and of course, when Garland returns, this will change. It'd be Halliburton and Strus on each other. To start the game, it was Merrill and Halliburton on each other, right? So that kind of just created this long ripple effect of changes from expectation and game plan and all that. And I don't know what the Cavs thought of Garland's status for this game, but I say all this about Sam Merrill to say, obviously, yes, they missed their all-star point guard who can pass and shoot and do all these things. And even if Kyle Anderson's point is, well, he's not a good defensive player, yeah, okay, like the Cavs didn't defend that well anyway. They needed the offensive punch tonight, and they didn't have it.
Well, Kenny Atkinson after the game said, our offense let us down. Like, it's easy to look at this and say the Pacers shot, as you said, the snot out of the basketball. And they did. And can the Cavs be better defensively? Yes, they need to be better defensively. This was not a championship caliber effort on either end of the floor for them, but they came into this game after setting the record for the best offensive series in NBA history against Miami. Obviously, these two opponents, very different in caliber, but they were also the number 1 offense in the regular season. They were a great offense from start to finish this year, and they didn't play like it. They can talk about being a defense-first identity type team, and they do that. And there were stretches certainly in the third quarter when they went on that 13-0 run or 14-0 run. I believe it was when Donovan Mitchell checked back in about midway through that quarter. And yes, getting stops is when this team is going to look its best. But at the end of the day, this is a series where, especially as we talk about starting Sam Merrill, they're leaning into offense. They need to score more than 112 points against this Pacers team. Like, I agree with Kenny that they were let down on both ends of the floor, but I look at this as more of an offensive issue than a defensive issue moving into game 2.
That 17-4 run, certainly scary for the Pacers. And, you know, I know they felt it in that moment, right? They're shooting well. The Cavs are not. Garland's out. Like, they needed to respond to that stretch, and they did. I want to talk about some stuff they did well and then get your thoughts on Cavs adjustments. But, you know, obviously the shooting part of this, everyone will discuss ad nauseum. One team shot very well, one team didn't. I think earned in some ways for the Pacers. Regardless, one thing we already talked about was the pace that they started the game with. That start was huge. I think they carried that throughout the night. The other thing is their balance has been a huge weapon for them in this postseason. They've had several guys in double figures extremely often. And tonight, again, they have not had a 30-point score the entire postseason. Right, their top scorer is always in the 20s. They always shake out with something like 6 or 7 guys in double figures. Then 2 other guys have like 8 or 9. I think 2 guys had 7. Today, that happened again. The entire starting 5 scores in double figures. Ben Mather makes plays off the bench. I think he had 7. I can't remember who their bench player was in double figures. It had to be.
I thought it was Mather, and I thought he hit 3 threes.
Yeah, so they get their 6, and then I think it was McConnell and Toppin who also had 7 contributed points. I'm not going to pull the box score. Regardless, that balance is something they'll be happy about because they move the ball very well, and that's when they feel like they're at their best. 30 assists there. That's repeatable, regardless of if shots go in or not. That process will be good. Tyrese Halliburton was seeing enough lanes to, okay, here comes a switch. Skip pass, great. That guy's open. And with the amount of attacking the Pacers have, I think they'll be happy with that. I think they'll be happy with some of their perimeter defense. I think that when their perimeter defense broke down, they'll be quite frankly pissed about how they reacted to those things around the rim. But some good point of attack work, especially on Mitchell. A lot of other guys had I thought a lot of the series would look like Cavs drive, Cavs lob, Jared Allen dunks. That was only once, maybe twice this whole game. So
I think one of them came in fast break.
Yeah,
I just don't think that you can necessarily count that with what you're talking
right.
about.
So I think that the Pacers will be happy process-wise with a lot of stuff that they could have prepped for and stuff that could happen again, even though, of course, shooting, and deservedly so, will be a dominant conversation in this game. Danny, in just a second, I think we need to talk about, from your perspective, things Cavs can do better in this game. The show is sponsored by BetterHelp. The world has made a lot of progress when it comes to mental health, but there's still a long way to go. Too many people still avoid therapy because they're afraid of being judged. But the truth is, taking care of your mental health should be just as normal as going to the gym or eating healthy. It's Mental Health Awareness Month. Let's normalize getting help and encourage everyone to prioritize their well-being, because when people feel supported, families, workplaces, and entire communities are better for it. Therapy has been helpful for many people for many reasons. It's not just about dealing with your big problems. It's about maintaining your mental wellness, just like you do with your physical health. And with BetterHelp, getting started is easier than ever. It's fully online, has a network of over 30,000 licensed therapists, and you can switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. We're all better with help. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA. Back here on Locked On Pacers and Locked On Cavs. Thanks for making either of us your first listen today. We'll both have our own individual shows after this game as well for your second listen after this. Danny, what can the Cavs do better besides put the ball in the net?
So besides make shots, I think that defensively, and this is weird to say, I guess, because Kenny talked about so much how this was an offensive issue, not a defensive issue. I thought they overhelped a little bit. I thought that they were a little too eager to help when somebody didn't, as they say, guard their yard on the perimeter. I thought that that was something that generated a lot of the looks because, as we've mentioned, not all of the looks that the Pacers made in this game were great ones. Some of them were, and I think a lot of those were because the Cavs overhelped on certain dribble penetration actions, and I just think that is something that needs to be cleaned up. They need to trust their defensive unit. Like, I think that is something they need to do. Yes, Evan Mobley is there when you need him to be, or Jared Allen is there when you need him to be. I think that is kind of thing number one that I look at and say, okay, the Cavs did these certain things well, but when things broke down, I think it was because they overhelped when the Pacers got near the basket. If the Pacers are shooting, and part of their shot diet, it felt like in that second quarter when they really made tough shots, they were forcing them into a lot of 17 to 19-foot looks that were just inside the three-point line. Pascal Siakam made some of them. Tyrese Haliburton made some of them. Got to live with those. I think they got a little bit too eager as the game went on, and I thought that led to some of the three-point makes that the Pacers had. From your end, what do you think the Pacers will take away from this game and trying to adjust on in game number 2?
Yeah, two of the obvious ones, the turnover and rebounding part of the game. They did win, obviously. Their efficiency per possession was actually, I believe at one point the Cavs had 10 more shot attempts, and the free throws were like even for a team that's usually as potent as the Cavs are offensively. You cannot give them a possession advantage. That's what Cavaliers are. They have a bunch of possessions in a row. They just keep scoring. They have to clean up those things. And look, the points in the paint thing, the Cavs are awesome at that. They give the Pacers fits there during the regular season. I think some of that, and most of it, was this is what the Pacers have to be better at. Just, man, were they bad guarding pick and roll coverages and shifting help over. And it helped that the Cavs were missing those threes, but they've got to rotate better through those actions because the Cavs are either getting a layup or, a good pass in the paint to one of their other bigs, even though there's one of the lobs over the top that we already talked about expecting. But another part of the second chance points that Aaron Nesmith pointed out was offensive rebounds, right? That goes back to the rebounding we already talked about. Allen, Mobley, whatever. Grab it, put it right back up. That's easy buckets that the Pacers have to prevent. So that's just like generic, kind of obvious things that they need to do better. I think they also, at times this game, got a little too like, ooh, who's Jared Allen on? Let's attack that guy. And sometimes that did work, but Siakam had some tough jumpers trying to shoot over him. They would try to get past him in the lane and get like a half step, but not enough to create anything. You just kind of have to reset. The Pacers did move pretty well today. I thought their offensive tempo, as we already talked about, was pretty good, but they are not a mismatch hunting team. And when they get into that, they don't look like themselves. I thought that happened a little too much, but you can mask that when you make the shot anyway.
Yes, that's one of the things that did stand out to me is they wanted to go at Jared Allen a lot. And I thought the Cavs actually kind of leaned in a little bit too much to trying to attack Tyrese Haliburton on that.
He defended really well today.
He defended really well today. That was one of the things that stood out to me about that is I think that they need to just kind of stay in their offensive flow. They're not a team that's at their best. And I think in some big games that they've played, primarily against Boston during the season, and they've won this way, but it's not the thing they do best, but they can get a little hunt happy where they start trying to pick off the weakest defender. And yes, there are some defenders that are better than others. And We heard Darius Garland's comments during the last series where, what did he say? They want to pick on Tyler Hero of the Miami Heat. And then they actually kind of went away from doing that in games 3 and 4 after Garland said that. Now, maybe that's because Garland wasn't out there and the philosophy changed a little bit offensively, but overall, I think that they need to try and stay more so within their offensive flow and stick to that game plan rather than saying, oh, there's Tyrese Halliburton. I want to call him up. I want to get him switched on to me if I'm Donovan Mitchell. And you're going to win that battle, but you're not going to win it every single time. And I think that's one of the things to take away is that if the Cavs play more like the Cavs want to play, they'll be fine. But I think that the Pacers did a good job of getting them out of what they want to do offensively for much of this night.
Danny, I'm proud of us. Every basketball podcast starts with adjustments. They go, they should change their lineup. They should change their rotation. But that is part of this, too. I think the Pacers figured out quickly that probably only one of Thomas Bryant or Ben Shepherd's going to be a guy in this series. Darius Walker played in the first half, Thomas Bryant in the second half. So that answered none of my questions about who they'll decide to play going forward. Actually, Bryant did okay. His defense was yikes. But his offense was good enough, and they clearly went to him because they needed rebounding. He made a post fade that I was like, Thomas Bryant's taking fadeaway jump 2-pointers in this game, and he made it to start the fourth quarter. And then Shepherd, they're playing him because he's one of their better point of attack defenders. I already criticized the Pacers for that, but I think a lot of their adjustments are going to be keeping up with the Cavs as the series goes on, and he did not give them enough offensively. So I would not be shocked if only one of them plays in the next game. Darius Walker was okay moving the ball. His shot didn't fall. I think he's probably the 9th best offensive guy, which is why he sticks no matter what. And it's just one of Shepherd Bryant. Any changes for the Cavs rotation, or is it just Garland back? They know that'll be.
So you bring up the Thomas Bryant fadeaway that he hit in the lane, and that was kind of the moment where I looked to the guy sitting next to me in our media seating. I just said, you know what? I don't think it's the Cavs' night tonight. Like if that's the shot that's going down and over good defense, it's like, you know what? I don't know that the Cavs are going to be able to pull this one out. The thing that I look at, obviously, like the easy thing to say is get Darius Garland back in the lineup. We don't know what his health situation is going to be. I am mildly surprised he didn't play in this game. I think that.
So was Rick Carlisle, who joked before the game, oh, he's playing. And then he didn't.
Kenny Atkinson told us he went through a full practice on Friday, had the day off on Saturday and prepped for this, and then was not available on Sunday. Obviously, that's the easy one to say. Very curious about Isaac Okoro because he played, I don't know how many minutes. I think he actually finished as a plus in the plus-minus category, which, of course, does not always tell the complete story of how you played. But the Pacers have no interest in defending him. He's going to be able to stand in the corner, and there might not be another guy on his side of the floor. He missed both three-pointers or all 3 3-pointers. I don't remember he attempted, but I know he didn't make one on Sunday night. And if he's not making that shot, because there was one possession, I think the Pacers were up by 2 points in the fourth quarter. Cavs did a great job, generated a great look. It's Isaac Okoro in the left corner. Can't make the shot. Like it was the great shot just for the wrong guy. So I do wonder if they want to lean in more offensively. And the other thing too, to take away from this, and Kenny Atkinson has done this all year. It's been part of who the Cavs are is they rely on their depth. Donovan Mitchell only played 33 minutes in this game. I do think that it probably makes sense to ramp up his minutes, get him closer to 37, 38 minutes in the postseason. Like that's what saving him in the regular season was for him to be able to play those longer stints, to play heavier minutes in the playoffs. Or here, he still only played 33 minutes. I know that he's obviously didn't necessarily have a great night tonight, but I would think that maybe it makes sense to see him play more, Evan Mobley play more. Obviously, we don't know the status of Darius Garland for Tuesday, but maybe playing the better players more is something. And that sounds really silly to say, but maybe playing the star players more is an adjustment Kenny Atkinson and the Cavs can make.
The Pacers' worst game of the first round, they leaned too much on their bench. They went away from that immediately. In game 4, Nembhard was there minutes later at 37. That seems like the healthy number when you're going for a depth team that you're relying on your depth, but you still want your stars to be stars.
Right. I
liked that number for the Pacers, who have similarly tried to rely on their depth to keep their stars as close to 100% as possible. Really looking forward to game 2 in this building. Will the Cavs shoot better? Almost certainly. Will the Pacers shoot worse? Almost certainly. But how will everything else go in the game? Can the Pacers get back to Indy up 2-0? That would shock everybody, including me, who picked the Cavs to win the series. Quite the start for the Pacers. They took advantage when they need to. Anything else, Danny, today?
Not that I can think of. I'm sure there will be much more specific, in-depth coverage of this game for the Pacers from you and certainly for the Cavs from me.
Of course, check out Locked On Pacers and Locked On Cavs for our solo episodes for more. Thanks for watching, guys. We'll catch you both after game 2.